Good evening and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you from the studios in Las Vegas here of the American Gun and Glory Network. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up with Bob Irwin is on YouTube. We put up a new show every Thursday around 5 p.m. When you get that show, you can subscribe to it on YouTube and it'll automatically come into your system. If you're not able to watch it live, you don't have to hunt it down. It will be sent to your computer a day or so later by YouTube, and you'll get it basically in an email. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network, which is a compilation of 7 or 8 stations throughout generally rural Nevada. There are 3 broadcast stations in Reno and Sparks and Carson City and so forth. And if you go online to find the Nevada Talk Network, you will find a list of their shows, or you can go to www.KELY1230.com, which is their main station. And the feed is carried simultaneously in all stations across Nevada. So it's kind of a good one for politicians too, with this election coming up. If you have a question or comment on the show, you can contact me at my email, bob@firedupmail.com. That will be showing somewhere on the screen, I believe. Or leave a message on my home recorder, which is area code 702-257-1060. I do answer all inquiries where you leave a contact information. And we'll get back to you with an email or a text. And any email directed to my guests can be sent to that address or to their own if they give it on the air. And I will forward that to them for response. This show, as everybody knows, we generally talk about self-defense cases and use of a firearm and self-defense and good shootings and bad shootings and so forth. And my guest today, Las Vegas attorney Jacob Reynolds, and I were discussing that actually last night, and I have this wonderful 8- and 9-page outline written, but we got to talking about a judge issue, which Jacob is very familiar with. That judges right now are elected and receive funding then from attorneys and attorney firms, and it creates kind of a perceived conflict of interest, if you will. I don't think personally any judge that I know of is throwing cases because they are on the payroll of some giant law firm, but it certainly creates what we call I'm looking for the word, the appearance of impropriety. So I'm going to talk to Jacob about that instead of this outline, because we have a lot of election stuff coming up, and I thought it would make an interesting subject for this show. So it is the politics of court work that we're talking about, between my experience as a bailiff and Jacob's vast experience in litigation. We will maybe solve some problems or answer some questions for the listeners. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
Thank you, Bob.
If you would be so kind as to give the listeners your background in law and so forth, and related what we're talking about here.
Certainly. I am I am a first-generation Nevadan, I guess. I'm originally from Utah, and my wife is originally from Idaho, but we met here and we call Nevada home. We have 4 children. Love Nevada. I have a brother and sister who live here. One is a firearms instructor. You've been a good friend for some years now through different political groups that we're involved with, and happy to come on your show. As my professional background, I've been a practicing attorney for approximately 11 years, and I started as a lawyer working for the Chief Judge Roger Hunt in the federal court, and which is an appointed position approved by Congress. We see a lot of that going on in the TV nowadays with different approvals that President Trump has nominated. But I also, now I work primarily, and that's my specialty, is in federal court. But I also do a lot of work in the state court system as well. And I work in various different types of cases, commercial law cases. Mainly 100% of my work is on the civil side. Once in a while, I'll have somebody try to get me to get involved in a criminal case, and I refer them to a good criminal defense attorney. And I've got referrals if anybody wants referrals to a good criminal defense attorney. But certainly have an opinion on the judicial system in Nevada and what we do, because those judges who sit are not just criminal or civil judges. They are a mix. They see both those cases. So that's kind of my background. I do done a lot of work on representing politicians in front of the Ethics Commission. Also done political cases, constitutional law cases here in Nevada, the redistricting for the Senate and Assembly districts, handle that case, and now I'm one of the attorneys working on the current recall petitions for several of our senators, Nevada state senators who we're trying to recall.
Wow, a full political plate.
Yes.
I guess what I'm looking at here is the perception that what I've seen in working as a bailiff, the perception that because the judge has raised money generally from large law firms, that they are at a disadvantage in court. It's kind of human nature that the judge, if one party or the other has donated a large sum of money, particularly to the judge's campaign, that the judge is going to be nicer to him and certainly courteous. I don't know of any judges where that actually spills across the line and causes them to make biased decisions, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But how do we fix it? I mean, the appearance of impropriety is high on the voters' lists.
Right. And the strange thing about that, it really is the Judicial Code of Conduct is governed by this, what would you call it, this standard is a judge is supposed to avoid the appearance of impropriety, right? Now, in Nevada, we actually have another code that says you have a duty to sit, and my understanding is the duty to sit is based in part in the problem that we have elected judges and they're taking contributions to their campaigns, and you cannot excuse a judge simply because he or she has taken a contribution to their campaign, or for a variety of reasons. The judge has a duty to sit on a case.
So the other side couldn't challenge the judge
simply on that basis you can't.
Of donations.
Right, you can't do that. And there's a variety of other concerns that say you've formerly represented that company as a practicing attorney, you represented that company, that judge has a duty to sit. Now that's written into the Nevada law. It's been reviewed by the Nevada Supreme Court. When I applied to be a judge, that was part of my interview process, is the Supreme Court justice who was in that interview made sure I understood, look, if you get appointed to be a judge, you cannot go recusing yourself from cases where you would have where the world might see you have a perceived conflict, but you have a duty to sit. And so from the one side, you have this tug and pull here in Nevada, particularly with our system, where the Judicial Code of Conduct actually enforces a duty to sit,
right,
whereas the public perception, you've discussed the problem.
Will be the other way. We're going to have to break for a brief word from our sponsors right here, but we'll be back following up on this. This is a big deal to me. I've run into this a lot. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. Hi, I just wanted to let listeners know about a great experience I recently had at Godden Ford. I just bought a new Ford Escape there, and they took terrific care of me. Sales manager Moses Martinez and salesman Joe Tim offered me a great deal for Fired Up fans. Call Godden Ford. They're at 702-731-2121 and ask for Joe Tim or Moses Martinez. Ask for the Fired Up discount. They will give you employee pricing. That is invoice plus $100 on any new or used vehicle on the lot. Remember, to receive the Fired Up discount, their employee pricing, you must ask for Joe Tim or Moses Martinez at Godden Ford. They're at 6625 Roy Horn Way here in Las Vegas. Tell them Bob from Fired Up sent you. Thanks. And picking up where we left off, what's the solution? I know the appearance of impropriety on the part of the litigants themselves is huge because they don't understand that system.
Well, obviously.
And I want to, when you say the judge has a duty to sit, unlike a dog, you mean the judge has a duty to hear the case.
Right.
To sit for the case.
Sorry, that was a term of art, I guess.
Yeah, I do that all the time with gun. I'm in a business where the range is the distance to the target, or it's where sheep graze, or it's the great outdoors, and we use that term interchangeably. I went to the range and tested the range of my rangefinder.
There you
go. We get into. I understand the lingo, having been a bailiff for years and years, but it's tough when you're talking to people outside the industry. Anyway.
So how do we fix it?
How do we fix it? Do we ban judges from taking donations?
Well,
then
how do you run for office?
Campaign? Yeah.
So the Nevada legislature unanimously, this was a couple years ago, had passed an amendment to the Constitution. And to pass an amendment in the Constitution in Nevada, you have to take it through the legislature twice, and you have to take it to the voters.
Right.
And it passed through the legislature. My recollection, I'm not positive on this, but my recollection is that measure to appoint judges and to, I'm not sure if it was a true Missouri plan that they were trying to install, but they were trying to move away from elected judges and move to an appointment system.
What's a Missouri plan?
The Missouri plan is, so our neighboring state, Utah, has a Missouri plan where the judge is appointed, but it's still accountable to the people. Every 10 years they are on the ballot, and the people decide whether or not to keep that judge. And if the judge is removed, the way of replacing that judge is through an appointment panel, but the people have a direct influence on removing a judge still.
Basically, he's up for automatic recall.
Right.
That seems like a long time.
Yeah, 10 years.
Got a bad judge,
10 years. Oh, well, there's other methods of removing a bad judge. Here we've had a bad judge, for example, and I won't name names, but we've had judges that we've removed.
Don't name her name.
Exactly, but we've removed bad judges, or judges see the problem and they get, that's one extreme of the spectrum. You can just have a bad judge. What I see. You say the problem that creates is a perception problem of a client who says, well, my attorney didn't donate to this judge in her campaign, and that attorney, as a matter of public record, donated $5,000.
And now I lost the case, and
right.
Here we are.
So that's how a client views it. As from the attorney perspective, I've never seen that as much of a problem. I certainly see a concern there, and I understand that concern, but where I see the problem is judges who are afraid to lose support amongst the bar, and their position on doing that is to, rather than making a hard decision that will cut off the nose of one of the parties, they try to split the baby consistently. Whereas my opinion is, you go into court, you are there for a resolution because we couldn't come to a mediated solution on our own. It's time for somebody to say, no, you are the winner, you are the loser. And that causes a lot of frustration when, as attorneys, we see a judge who does not want to make a hard decision. And so that would be my
Had the
primary
experience of
complaint.
a few of those also.
Certainly.
Couple
Well,
of them
and
come
coming
to
from a
mind.
background of from the federal system where it's appointed, and those judges have a lifetime appointment. If you want to talk about difficulty of getting rid of somebody, you're talking about high crimes and misdemeanor, and somebody who, you need an act of Congress to get them out. And so now it's a different animal over there. But I would say this: they are not afraid to make big decisions because they know that it's not going to come back on them to lose their job for doing so.
Correct. I understand that, and when I was bailiffing for Victor Miller in Boulder City, we were talking about a judge who later did not or was defeated on re-election because he couldn't decide, and Vic said over and over, the judge's job is to decide.
Right.
And in cases somebody's right and somebody's wrong. In most cases, there's a little bit of give and take on both sides. And as you say, they're settled by mediation, so everybody's relatively happy. He used to say the best small claim we ever had was when both parties felt they lost. Then he knew that he did it exactly right.
Okay.
And if listeners don't know, very few cases actually go to court. We're probably
Go to
dealing
trial.
Go to trial. I'm sorry.
Right.
With 3 or 4%, maybe.
Probably those. I've heard some very low numbers lately of the tens of thousands of cases they have in the district court. Something around less than 200 actually got tried.
Yeah,
And
we
so-
were the couple of law firms I've worked for doing expert work were, it's annoying because we go through all the background and everything and all the tests, what we're going to say, and and we do this, and then 95% of them are settled.
Right.
And but that saves court time, and usually, we say a bad settlement is way ahead of a jury decision in most cases.
Well, some
'Cause
people are
everybody
afraid to
gets
go to trial.
Something they want,
Yeah, well, you in a settlement, you find something you can live with, right? And there's a lot of firms that are afraid to go to trial. And part of the problem of an elected judge system, once again, where you're talking about donating to judges, a solo practitioner or a small law firm doesn't have the money or resources to donate to every judge, correct? Or host a substantial fundraiser for a judge. And what that does, so when you go to a large law firm, you're paying a larger fee for the attorney. So what does that do on somebody who has a righteous claim but are poor? They are, they don't have the resources to fight
Right.
a big case, even though they have a good claim. And they can't hire an attorney at $400, $500, $600, $700 an hour, but that attorney who has billed at $500, $600 an hour can afford to donate to a judge's campaign. So it becomes this duplicative problem of perception. Now, I will say, frankly, the good judges, it doesn't matter. And I think the attorneys know who those good judges are. And it doesn't matter to them where they've received donations and such. They see people come in, because good judges read the brief. Good judges know what the law is when they hit the bench.
I'm
So
painfully aware of that. I worked as a bailiff for some time for one of the Boulder City judges who's now sitting on the regular court.
Right.
And Mark Denton. And Mark Denton reads everything himself. Yeah, he does those. He does the really complex cases where you got.
he's in the business court.
Yeah,
So been leading
jillions
the
of
business
cases
court for a while.
Mark is one of the guys that if I was appearing in his court and I was on the losing side, I would presume I was wrong. He just.
Right. And you appreciate that in judges, even though when you go to a court, you lose. You've got a good judge when you can lose and you can understand what the judge was thinking.
Why? Yeah, that he just didn't see it the way you
Right.
saw it, and that happens in criminal cases. I had one that was a gigantic criminal case, and what the we won the defense, and the expression the judge threw the other side a bone, the other side complained that they spent all this money copying things, so they were given by the court settlement $5,000 for making copies of things, and that was the bone he threw them.
Wow.
So they could say they didn't lose. It was settled. You know.
Right.
It was settled. You know, this was a $1 zillion shooting case, and it was settled for $5,000 on the part of the plaintiff. It was a good shoot, you know, but it's just so. The advice. We're going to have to break for a commercial, and we'll be back.
Okay.
We'll be right back and finish this up. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Hi. Now you can get a copy of my recently updated book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. This is based on my 40 years experience in evaluating and defending lethal force cases. Learn the rules of using deadly force before you have to guess in the middle of a hostile situation. For Fired Up Special, you can get this book for only $10. If you live outside the first 48, please add appropriate postage. Mail orders can be sent to Bob Irwin, P.O. Box 97413, Las Vegas, Nevada 89193. Thanks for ordering one. And we are back. I want to run through one current criminal type case to see if future judge would make the grade here. This took place on the 16th of November. Recently, there's no adjudication on it yet, and this will be a grade to see if he gets the same opinion that the actual judge does. This is in Woodstock, Georgia. Cherokee County pastor grabbed his gun and fought back to protect his wife and 3 children after deputies said a burglar broke into his home. The investigators say that just after 3 a.m., a man entered the house located on Santa Fe Trail just south of Georgia Highway 92. Deputies say the pastor heard the 19-year-old suspect breaking his basement window to try to get into the home. Investigators say the pastor went to investigate, found the intruder, and fired in self-defense. The subject received a gunshot wound to his head and ended up collapsing in the backyard. He was transported to Wellstar Kennestone Hospital and enlisted in stable condition. A neighbor who lives across the street said the pastor's wife came running to his house looking for help. She told him, "There's an intruder and my babies are in there." The wife and her 12-year-old child managed to escape, but the couple's 2 younger children, and they didn't list the ages of the youngsters, were still in the house. The wife in a front bedroom, apparently. The pastor wasn't hurt, neither were the 2 younger children, who slept through the entire ordeal, of course. The investigators said the 19-year-old lives near the pastor's home, but it was not clear why the pastor was targeted. They did eliminate drug deals and so forth. It's apparently just a random burglary. The charges against the wounded intruder were pending as of this report, because this just happened. He'll be charged with home invasion and reckless endangerment, the normal stuff you hear. So, Your Honor?
Well, what's the charge that's coming before me? So,
I think pretty well determined. It's going to, whatever their wording would be for a home invasion and reckless endangerment and so forth and so on. They're really hard to read. I've learned doing these stories that what they call the crime in Georgia is different than we would call it here.
Well, yeah, you know, you understand why you have the castle doctrine and things like that for this reason. You know, if, as a parent of young children, if someone broke into my house, you know, I'm going to defend them at all costs, and I have a firearm in my house and other mechanisms to prevent this type of thing from happening. But if you're breaking into somebody's house at night, and someone has young children there, if someone's there at the time, they have the right to defend themselves, absolutely, in my opinion. So,
yeah, and this is 3 in the morning. You can't really argue with the the family.
Right.
Thinking
This is a
that-
softball question. I feel like you've given me an easy question.
Well, this is a softball case, yeah. I got a hardball
young
one
children
here
in the
somewhere.
home. The person who did it was an adult.
And a minister, and
And the minister was the one doing the firing. Yes. So.
there are others that are more complicated, and I don't know that we have time. There is a case here that I'm going to use in more detail with someone who has more time. We're down to about 4 minutes of airtime. So this is in Lubbock, Texas, and a father told jurors that he's still suffering, and the family is suffering from basically post-traumatic stress. And he awoke to the sounds of somebody in the house, and he gets his gun and he goes looking, and he finds a guy in his kitchen pouring flammable liquid on the floor, and got a propane tank with him, and he's throwing matches into the propane, or into the liquid on the floor, and it didn't ignite. So he's striking matches and throwing them as this guy came in. He fired at the guy with his gun that he brought, shot him in the stomach. The guy is surviving, as it turns out, but here he walks in, an arsonist trying to burn his house down, and he and his wife and their children are all having nightmares over this. And the story
Sure.
is about this guy going to trial, and now he's found Jesus, and literally, and has changed his life around, and so forth and so on.
The arsonist?
The arsonist, yeah. And he's going to walk away with a minimum sentence off at a halfway house and so forth. He did a couple of years, and now they're letting him out. And the family is still having nightmares about him coming back and whatever, and they keep visualizing their house burning down and so forth. Mm-hmm. A horrible case, and this is the kind of case where you really look at the judge and go, he wants to let this guy out onto a halfway house, and basically credit for time served, because now he's mentally stable, says the psychologists who've interviewed him. We've seen this with our psychologists here, where people get out of prison.
This really isn't a gun case. This is a different kind of case.
Well, it's a home defense case.
It's a home defense case. Well, I mean, on this case, I mean, this is just emblematic. I wanted to punch in is like people come in and think, well, that's not the right thing to say, but just how horrible some of these situations are. Can you imagine the situation?
I mean,
somebody
understand
coming
the
into your
stress.
house
The
and trying to
kids are
burn it
having
down.
Nightmares. I mean,
Right.
they're just
Absolutely, and those people would absolutely, especially in Texas, would have a claim against that person, a civil claim against that person, but they wouldn't have any way to. It doesn't sound like that person is the CEO of some great company where they can actually get any money back.
Well, that's the
from
problem with civil
right.
claims, as you know.
Sure.
You can get all the judgments you want, but how do you collect from a guy has no money and
Right.
spent what he had on, I assume, on attorneys?
No, something you might want to be interesting to you is a victim rights law that they're working on. They've worked on here in Nevada, and it's going across the country, and it's through Red Rock Strategies that they're doing this. But pursuing a better way for victims, such as this family would be, to pursue a legal remedy in court and be able to appear in court and talk about this. Generally, they look at some states may look at this as a victimless crime because nobody was hurt,
the bad guy
house didn't burn
survived,
down,
and,
right? And so victimless crime, but there's a movement going on in the country right now to expand that definition of victim and give those victims more notice, more rights to be able to come in and testify in the preliminary stages of a trial on this type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this case I use as an example of why I tell people nobody wins gunfights. The fallout to the people that are involved, our friends or family members, goes on forever. And the attorney in this case for the arsonist made a great statement as to why, he's cured.
Right.
He's no longer a danger to himself or others. Here's a psychological report that says that. I don't know how the family believes that. They're letting the guy out who tried to kill us all, you know? I mean, this is tough.
Sure.
We'll have you back on as we get closer to the election. These are kind of fun. Thanks for listening to Fired Up. Catch us on YouTube. Again, as I said, at the American Gun and Glory Network. We'll be back next week. Have a good weekend.